Councilmember Gilliard, Councilmember Willis, Councilmember Gumbs, Councilmember Rawls. Right. And Mayor Edwards, you have a quorum.
Okay. Call the first item, please.
The first item.
Before you do that, I understand that we want to make, on your new agenda, we added one, you want to bring something.
Yes.
Mr. Malazzi.
Mr. Malazzi would like to move the discussion of the capital funding needs to right after the presentation of the grant writer.
Is that okay with the council?
Yes.
Okay, we can do that.
The first item is a presentation capability briefing by Value Added Accounting Services and Professionals. Mr. Malazzi.
So if you recall, the city manager presented last year, requested that instead of having the financial analyst, we will need to have a consultant in the name of the company so that we can tap in the resources that will be needed. If we need internal audit, as the Councilwoman Willis has advocated for it, then we can get the resources. If we need internal controls, we need financial reports, that will be the same company that will be helping us. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like they are in yet, so they are not yet in.
What was the hold up? What did you say?
They are not yet in. The presenters, yes. They are not yet in.
Who was the presenter?
No,
who were they?
They will be presenting for the capability briefing.
But they're not here now.
They are not yet in here, yes. So we can
Who are
move
they?
it.
Who are they? What's the name of the group?
The VAAS professionals.
Okay. All right, then why don't we go down to your capital funding?
Capital funding, we are here.
They're here. Isn't that Mr. Wall and all?
We just need the
I'm about to be a little bit confused here. First people are not in, and you want to go down to the capital funding piece?
Yeah, that's what we're starting with.
Okay, go ahead. Who is that? Okay, go ahead.
So on the capital funding, I'll give an introduction, then thereafter I'll leave it to our financial advisors, who is headed by Mr. Edward. Most of us, we know he engineered or he helped us during our tax anticipation note last year. So the background of our discussion on our capital needs is that we have our 2019 balanced budget. However, besides the balanced budget, that is to go through September 30th, 2019, there are several capital needs that we need. Unfortunately, those capital needs do not have funding. They are not part of our 2019 budget, approved budget. So all capital needs that are not urgent will be dealt with in the 2020 budget. It will require the mayor and the council who have to approve the funding of the capital needs during the mid-year budget that will be done on the 23rd of April 2019. The following will be some of the options. These are some of the options that we can fund our capital needs. One of them will be to use GEO bonds, which is the normal general obligations bonds, known as GEO bonds. And that will require the approval of the citizens. And it has to go through referendum that will be in November. In that case, it does not meet our current needs, but it's one of the options that we can use the capital funding. It may not be now, but it may be in the 2020 budget or in the years to come. The second one will be create urban development agency and sell bonds backed by our city taxes. There is no cap on how much we can borrow. but it will depend on how much we will be able to repay. The process will take about 60 days, of which they are going to discuss in details of how to go about borrowing through using the urban development agency. The third option of borrowing, funding the capital needs will be used the Downtown Development Authority, which we have discussed in the past. We'll discuss now, and we are going again to discuss within the session. So they are going to discuss with us in detail so that you understand what is the DDA and what benefits we can get. What can we fund? What does DDA fund? What can it fund for? And as you see that we'll have to, the DDA can, the city can fund up to 3 mills, can support up to 3 mills. And we do not have those 3 mills. As you know that our mills now we are raising up to 11.579 and we are capped up to 13.469. So we cannot raise the taxes beyond the 13.469. Two things have to happen. Either the mayor and the council have to lift that cap, or we have to go to the taxpayers to ask for removing that cap. Those two things have to happen, otherwise we are capped up to 13.469. And the downtown development, most of the projects are to revitalize the business district, which will be to bring in more employment, to advertise businesses. The Downtown Development Authority does not fund capital projects, but we can back them up to 3 mills. And the fourth one will be the tax anticipation note, which we already had. We borrowed $12 million, we paid. However, we need to know that if we borrow the ton, we will have to pay every December 31st for the life of those tons. Every 31st December you have to repay. You can get it again and you repay it, but every December 31st they are due. With that introduction, I'll bring up our financial advisors to explain in details if there are some other funding and where we stand with our finances as we go towards our mid-year, where we need to fund these capital needs. At the same time, we'll be preparing for 2020. Our discussion of capital needs are only for 2019. 2020 will be covered in the 2020 budget. Yes, ma'am.
Before you go,
yes,
you did a lot of conversation on DDA. And if you look in the document, it says DDA or Development Authority. You didn't say a lot about the Development Authority. And the third thing you didn't say a lot about was the Main Street. And I think those things are crucial to people's understanding. I don't know if Mr. Wall's going to bring them up or not.
he will.
Okay.
He will definitely. So he will cover all that one, DDA, Development Authority, Main Street, so that we understand what the government can gain out of that, or what support the government can do working hand in hand with those authorities.
Okay.
Thank you, sir. Hello, Mayor, council members. Couple of things I want to say about introduction. One, City of South Fulton is not even 2 years old yet. Y'all had to create a city. And think about the Fulton County Tax Digest hasn't been approved by the State of Georgia Department of Revenue since 2016. So in 2017, you couldn't levy taxes until 2018 and collect them. So you all did a TAN for about $12 million in 2017. You only been in operation 6 months. We couldn't get them paid off by December 31 that year. We borrowed another $4.5 million early part of 2018. In November of last year, y'all paid it all off. So City of South Fulton has no debt, none whatsoever. You're not quite 2 years old. You got a $60-some-odd million budget, $33 million for property taxes, and 20-some-odd million from local option sales tax. You all have done the most with the least of any client I've ever had in 34 years of doing the business. And so I want to compliment you on being able to work with such challenging times and dealing with Frank in the last year and a half, Fulton County didn't pay you all the time like it was supposed to on $4 million and change. You've got $3 million in your budget for insurance, premium tax that you can't get. You all continually get lemons and make lemonade out of it. So the thing I wanted to compliment on you is what you've done so far and how good you've done. Most of us, when we buy a house, we go to the bank, we borrow money. You all have been funding capital out of cash flow. And as your financial advisor, I'm trying to encourage you not to do that. I want you all to find a way to fund capital like the rest of us when we buy a house, is do long-term financing. So you all are paying cash, and what TANs you borrow, TANs are required by Georgia law to be paid off every December 31st. And so you all, I think, need to do your capital with some long-term debt. A building for the last 20 years, a clubhouse might last 10 years. There are things that you all are spending cash money on that would be better served if you borrowed the money, and then the annual payment is a whole lot lower than paying it all for cash. Georgia law is so squirrely. The Georgia Constitution makes it very difficult for cities and counties and school boards to borrow money. And Frank is giving you a slide presentation. One is general obligation bonds. You all can have a voter referendum in November of this year for GO bonds. State Constitution says the amount of money you can borrow for GO bonds cannot exceed 10% of your digest. Y'all's digest is $2.9 billion. That's phenomenal. That's a really, really big tax digest. Most counties in the state of Georgia do not have a tax digest as big as yours. So you can have, under Georgia Constitution, $290 million outstanding. Y'all ain't gonna come close to that, but that's your limit, $290 million, GO bonds and voter referendum. The next option is Georgia's Constitution has this thing called the Intergovernmental Contracts Clause, that one authority can contract with the city for services or facilities they're each empowered to perform. And so cities and counties look for an authority that has the power to do whatever project they want to do. So a water and sewer authority can issue water and sewer revenue bonds and secure it with the city taxes. A recreation authority can do recreation projects. Fulton County uses a Fulton County Building Authority. Sandy Springs, I've heard Councilman Khalid talk about Sandy Springs. Sandy Springs did a big city hall and a performing arts center by going to the legislature and asking them to create a public facilities authority. So the legislature can create a building authority, a public facilities authority. You all as a governing authority can create a similar type authority without having to go to the legislature, called a URA, or Urban Redevelopment Agency. There's been some talk about a DDA or a development authority. It cannot do governmental projects. In 1984, the city of Union City created a DDA and wanted to issue revenue bonds secured by taxes with the city to build a new city hall. A DDA and a DA's public purpose is promotion of trade, industry, commerce, and employment opportunities. And the Georgia Supreme Court, in a Supreme Court case called Odom versus Union City Downtown Development Authority, said that a DDA has to have a for-profit private entity in the middle of it in order to be able to do a project. It cannot do a governmental project. And the city argued in that case that people would be coming to City Hall to pay fines, to pay water and sewer bills, they'd be buying sandwiches, commerce around the city. And the Supreme Court said that ain't the case. That ain't enough public purpose to further that DDA's public purpose. And so in my business, and Doug Selby, who's a bond lawyer, he actually, I think he lives in the city of South Fulton. He's a bond lawyer. He renders legal opinions. In our business, a DDA or a development authority, because of this old Odom case, cannot do a city hall, it can't do a jail, it can't do a city park, it can't do a governmental issue. So you all, if you don't want to have a voter referendum, need to find an authority that has the power to issue revenue bonds. The revenue bonds, there's no revenue from a city hall or revenue from a public park or revenue from a jail or a fire station. And so the revenue is this intergovernmental contract with the city. You currently levy 11.579 mills. Your cap is 13.469 mills. What in the world is that? Am I old?
No.
Yeah. We've got a lot more to go. So your capacity under your millage rate cap is 1.89 mills. 1.89 mills times your digest of 2.9 billion. You've got 5,534,000 of capacity left underneath your millage rate cap. So your contract with this URA, or if you want to go to the legislature and create a public facilities authority or a building authority like Fulton County has, your contract is limited to what you have left under that cap, or you gotta get rid of the cap. But let's look at what you could borrow. In today's credit markets, City of South Fulton can sell $10 million in bonds for a 20-year maturity at 3.2%. So the annual payment on $10 million for 20 years at 3.2% is $684,000. $684,000 would come out of this $5.5 million that y'all got as capacity. Another way to look at it is $684,000 a year is $250,000, 0.25. So when y'all's thinking about capital items and taking it out of your general fund budget and relieving some of the pressure, and I want y'all to do that because I want y'all to start adding money to savings. We call it a general fund balance, and y'all need savings. Y'all have only been in business a year and 10 months or so, and you all don't have a positive general fund balance. I want it to be positive. And so we're gonna do that by, I mean, y'all brand new, you know, a city's been around since the 1800s, got plenty of fat. Y'all ain't got a lot of fat because you're brand new. And so I want you all to add to savings to get that to a positive number. And the goal is to have 3 months of operations as your general fund balance. And so if you got a $60 million budget, I would like your general fund balance to be, what, 10 or 12 million. And so I want you all to think about pulling capital out of your general fund budget, and then y'all got capital needs that you want, add it to a bond issue, and let's do a 20-year bond issue and get, instead of 10 or 20 million, you're only having to find $684,000 to pay. And you have a lot of capacity underneath your millage rate cap because your digest is only 2.9, you digest $2.9 billion, which is really, really big. Brookhaven's tax digest is $3 billion. Sandy Springs is $7 billion. College Park is $1 billion. So at $2.9 billion as far as wealth that your tax digest, y'all are a wealthy city for $2.9 billion. The main thing I wanted to get across is that DDA and a development authority does not work for the types of capital projects y'all want. What does a DDA or a development authority do? In Georgia, about the only major incentive that you can give new economic development is tax abatement. Y'all reading the paper all the time, the Fulton County Development Authority gives tax abatement, free property taxes to all kinds of folks as incentive. A development authority or a DDA, that's mainly what they do, is they act as a conduit for private entities to get tax abatement. The other thing a DDA or development authority could do is a 501c3, like a charter school. It has to have some for-profit private entity that goes through that to meet its public purpose of promotion of trade, industry, commerce, and employment opportunities. And so a DDA or a development authority is important for you to have, but it can't do governmental projects for your capital needs. You'll need to create something called a URA to do that, or go to the legislature and ask them to create one. Main Street's a governmental project. It had to be done through URA. But like a hotel, if it's a Main Street project, or a conference center, if it's a Main Street project, with a private person operating that conference center, it might go through the DDA and the Development Authority. And one of the tools that the Georgia law gives you, you all have 3 mills that's outside of your cap that you can pledge or levy to a DDA or Development Authority to help them foster a credit enhancement in order to get projects done. But again, it can't do projects just for you. It has to be for some private entity. Yes, sir?
Let me ask you a question. On the cap issue, I know that our charter says one thing, but is there an exemption based on home rule?
So I passed a note to Doug Selby, who is a lawyer. I've been in business 34 years, and I have practiced a lot of law, but I ain't a lawyer. I don't get to give a legal opinion. But in my opinion, your city charter is a local General Assembly law,
Right.
and it says in there that the cap's gotten away with by going to a voter referendum. The Georgia Constitution has something called home rule that allows you all as a city home rule powers. The Constitution should trump local law, and I think this body could get rid of the cap without going to a voter referendum. I passed a note to Doug. Do you have an opinion on that, Mr. Selby?
Where you go there?
You don't?
Madam Attorney? City Attorney.
Is Amelia here? Hey, Amelia.
Yes.
How you doing? Good to see you. Hey, John O'Neill, how you feeling?
Hi, sir. How are you?
So y'all agree with me?
Agree with one particular. That's a very
Well,
general question.
I asked him a question about the cap, and I know what the charter says, but the state has a different opinion on the home rule.
So here's the way I described it, Ms. Walker, is the city charter says that the cap, the millage rate cap of 13.469 mils can be done away with by a vote or referendum. That's in the city charter. But the Georgia Constitution has something called home rule powers. And so the Constitution would trump that local city charter law. Home rule allows mayor, council, or a county commission to get rid of the millage rate cap under the home rule amendment process, where they advertise for 2 weeks and then vote on it the third week. And so my opinion was that the cap could be done away with by home rule amendment, and that would trump what the city charter says is a vote or referendum. And that's the question. But I ain't a lawyer and you are, you get to decide.
So I guess the short answer is if there is authorization in the Constitution to do an act, then certainly we would be authorized to do that act irrespective of what the charter says. So the question becomes, is the charter provision that's being referred to compatible with the Constitution or inconsistent with it? And I would have to look at the provision and the Constitution to see if that's an answer, and then we can also take into consideration what other cities are doing, because our charter is very similar to.
My question is not to get around the charter, but I think that all the facts need to be on the table. If that is available to us, we should know about it.
Yeah, certainly. You have my email. If you can forward me the provisions that you're talking about, and then I can review and I can certainly brief the council.
Yes, ma'am. The intent to put the cap in the charter was to, if we ever had to go over that millage rate cap that's in the charter, then we would go to the people, residents, and residents would get an opportunity to vote on whether or not we should go above that cap. And so I appreciate the dialogue, but I really will feel uncomfortable removing that cap out of the charter, because that is what was said to the residents. If we were to go above that cap for any reason, if we had to raise taxes, it will be a decision that residents will have to make.
And Councilman Wilson, I'm with you. I just wanted to make sure that there is an option out there, everybody knows what they have in front of them. Okay? Anybody else in the queue? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank y'all, council.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilwoman Gilliard, I didn't see your hand.
Okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. Who made the presentation? I didn't hear his name.
Ed Wall.
Yes, ma'am. My name is Ed Wall. I'm
Okay.
your financial advisor.
I just wanted to make a comment that what you said was real good information. You shared a lot of things that I know I did not know. So what we really need to do, and I'm going to go back to what I always talk about, and before we make any decision about anything as it relates to our funding and what direction we're going to go in, we need to make sure that it is part of a strategic plan, and that we strategically discuss how we want to move forward with whatever it is that we're doing, and thus far we don't have that yet. So we need to speed that up very quickly. I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Gilliard. Ms. Wilson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wall. It was very informative. So from my understanding, just let me clarify, because there's a lot of confusion around development authorities and downtown development authorities. So from what you have just presented, the development authorities cannot be used to build city halls, can be used to build any public building or public facility. They only can be used as a tool to help fund incentives to private entities.
Correct. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
Ms. Rob?
I was going to kind of ask, I know the city has a need to invest in a number of capital improvements in our existing facilities, and you kind of talked about a number of things. do you think the URA is the best tool, or what do you think is the best tool based on that? Because that's an area, and we've also talked about making improvements in our parks. So out of the toolkit that you shared in terms of what would you recommend?
So the only tool available to you without going to the legislature is a URA. And so it's either the URA or go to the General Assembly.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, anyone else? Hearing none, thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Mayor. Thank you all.
Okay, yeah, another portion, right?
Grant. Grant. So the next one will be the grant consultants. We had to choose company instead of having an employee, because the company will help, or the consultants will help of giving us more resources that we need to meet different needs of the our grants. So I have our two representatives here for the consulting that had to go through the procurement process. And this is the organization that was found suitable to serve us for the grant writing services.
Good evening, Mayor Edwards and members of the council. My name is Betty Barnard, and I'm with Resurgence Impact Consulting. And this is my colleague Irene Turner, also with Resurgence Impact Consulting. So here is a brief agenda of what I will review today, and of course we will have time for questions and answers as well. Our company was founded in 2015, and our mission is to activate our clients' potential for transformative social progress and healing. We are a collaborative of experts that work primarily with nonprofit and government agencies on services such as grant writing, board development, strategic planning, program development, and other special projects. This is our contact information. Irene is a licensed Master's of Social Work, and I am a Master's of Nonprofit Organizations, and I also have a Grant Professional certification from the Grant Professional Certification Institute. We also work with other subcontractors and contractors from time to time, depending on when we need to pull specific expertise for certain areas and certain clients. So what we have proposed for the City of South Fulton is a two-part contract of comprehensive services that encompass organizational assessment for grant readiness and also for, of course, grant services themselves. So our first goal would be to analyze the City of South Fulton's infrastructure. As a newer city, we understand, of course, y'all have worked very hard to put certain policies and procedures in place, certain systems in place, and of course you have a staff team of experts who are working to run the city. So what we would do is we would think ahead, what does a successful city government need to look like in order to be competitive for grant funds and also to manage them successfully? So we have to think about the end goal. When you actually have the grant funds, do you have the capacity to manage them well and to be good stewards of grant funds and to carry out the purposes of the programs and projects so that you meet your citizens' needs? So our objectives to fulfill this goal would be to assess the use of best practices to fulfill community needs, ensure adherence to 2 Code of Federal Regulations Part 200, the uniform guidance for federal grants, and ensure you have the capacity to actually manage grant funds. This would encompass a detailed review of documents and interviews with some key staff across departments, and we would produce a final report of recommendations and an implementation plan to ensure that the City of South Fulton is grant ready. We would also offer templates and certain modifications to documents, policies, procedures, and the like to make sure that y'all are grant ready. The second component is to develop a comprehensive grant strategy and to actually secure the grant funding that will fulfill the city's needs and priorities. So as y'all were just discussing, it's very important to be strategic and intentional about seeking grant funds. Grant seeking is very competitive, and it is an immense investment of time and resources. And so in order to ensure that you're using your resources effectively, we will do a comprehensive funding search to identify which funding opportunities align with what the city's needs are and what the city is ready for. And we will help you apply for those grant opportunities. So this comprehensive service package will include project coordination, such as developing grant application timelines specific to the funding opportunities. We would work directly with staff teams, depending on which departments are seeking the grants or seeking to collaborate. We would help staff to design the projects, collect data, and complete budgets, to conduct needs assessments and solicit community input as needed, and also draft any key attachments. We'll also provide consultation on competitive project design, developing partnerships between agencies and with constituents of other nonprofits, and collecting community input. And of course, the end goal is to secure grant funding. This was our projected timeline. Unfortunately, I know we got bumped back a little. Y'all have a packed agenda and a lot of things to do. So we would have to amend this timeline if we are selected to move forward. But essentially, our plan would have been to complete an assessment by April 30th and to work to complete prospect research and a grant calendar by the end of May. Of course, grant seeking itself is dependent on deadlines, so that would be ad hoc depending on what those are. And our services would also include ongoing communication, bi-weekly check-in calls, and any meetings as needed. Our anticipated impacts for our scope of work would be to establish systems for the city of South Fulton that would optimize your potential for success, to develop a cohesive and effective grant strategy, to educate and empower key stakeholders within the city of South Fulton government and residents in the grant seeking and grant management process, to facilitate communication and transparency, and obviously to secure grant funding to fulfill constituent needs and council priorities. Another end game that we have is to really create a collaborative culture. This is what can truly set grant applicants apart, not only when you're applying for grants, but also post-award when you're managing them. Oftentimes, a successful grant application can result in funding that then can get lost on the back end. So when staff actually feel empowered to manage grant funds effectively, they have the tools that they need to track and report grant activities and grant funding, and they can collaborate across agencies and departments effectively, then they're more likely to have success and be able to report to the funder that y'all have achieved amazing outcomes for your communities. So that's part of what we want to do. And that's a key component of the grants assessment process, is to do some legwork to assess where you are, build the city's capacity in order to manage funds effectively by creating culture. And with that, I'll take any questions.
We have, Ms. Gunn, before you go, Ms. Gilliard, do you have any questions? I want to get you down.
Do you have any questions?
Okay, Ms. Gunn.
Thank you for your presentation. I just have a few questions. Are you based here locally?
Yes, we are based in Atlanta.
Okay. Also, too, have we done a preliminary study of how much all of this would cost?
We have submitted a proposal to the finance team.
Okay, so maybe I need to direct my question to Mr. Miles or Mr. Clerk.
It went through the procurement process, so the procurement manager put all the details.
So we conducted an RFP for
Yes.
this?
No, it wasn't an RFP, it wasn't a formal RFP. I solicited the quotes. I solicited more than 3 quotes for both services. They're going to be doing an assessment, an organizational assessment that looks at the city's needs and develop a strategy moving forward and to determine what grants are needed. that portion of the agreement is a cost of $15,000. Then there is a series of 24 grants over a 12-month period that they will pursue for us. And that one is at a rate of $24,000. Yes.
Okay, and you all have tools in place to manage, this will be a contract that the city will be entering into?
Yes, it
right?
will be.
Okay, so are we going to be doing one portion first?
Yes, the organizational assessment will be first, and I believe that's what they described, where they'll meet with council, they'll meet with various departments, get a feel for what the city's priorities are, and based off that, then the second portion of the agreement, where they'll, over the year, they'll apply for up to 24 grants for us over a 12-month period.
The main aim of the assessment is for them to create a blueprint for us. We will have a blueprint that will be guiding us throughout our grant writing.
So I just have a few more questions. Originally, this position was in-house. What is the reason, or was it in-house? I thought we had a grant
We had
administrator.
never had the grant writer, we had the grant administrator. It's still to be in-house. So grant writer is the first one.
I'm confused, I'm sorry. There are two, I know there are two separate positions, but did the grant administrator conduct?
Grant
the writing
administrator
grants?
was in-house and will still be in-house. That is still vacant. So grant administrator will be administering, helping the departments to manage the grants throughout the life of the grant. For the grant writer is to go out and find out grants that we are eligible.
So we're still planning to fill that
Yes.
position?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
My last question, and this is to the company. What projects have you worked on, and what other cities have you worked with that actually show some success?
Sure. So I've worked with several municipalities, including city and county governments, on grants related to housing and urban development, criminal justice, health and human services. We have not worked directly with a city before, and that was acknowledged in our preliminary interview. To mitigate this issue, we were asked to turn to colleagues who worked for municipalities or who currently are and ask for their guidance. I did that. I'm really lucky to have gotten over a dozen responses from some colleagues across the country and the state. And so we worked to compile a document of what their recommendations are and discuss that with them. What are some things that we need to be aware of when working directly with the cities in mind?
So basically what I took from that was that you haven't worked directly with cities, but you have gotten some guidance. Do you know what can you share with cities that you received some feedback or strategy from?
Not off the top of my head, ma'am. I can look that up though, because I have it documented in my email records.
Okay. I have any further questions.
Okay, Ms. Woods.
What are some of, well, you said you haven't worked, so have you worked with any government agencies before?
Yes, ma'am.
What government agencies have you worked with?
I've worked with Fulton County. I worked with the Administrative Office of the Courts. Our company has. I am a former employee of the state's Criminal Justice Coordinating Council.
So have you secured any grants for Fulton County government?
Yes.
Okay, what grants have you secured for Fulton County government?
The one that's coming to the top of my head is a reentry project for about $2 million.
Okay. And so have you ever secured any community block grants? Have you worked with any
The
community?
CDBG specifically? No, we have not.
Okay. So have you secured any grants for any type of park and recreation facilities?
No, we have not. That would be the kind of grant project or transportation, other infrastructure project where we would work with a contractor.
Okay.
Our primary expertise is with health, human services, and criminal justice.
Okay. Yes.
Okay, Ms. Rob. Dr. Rob.
Couple questions. Was $2 million the highest grant award that you've received from a government entity?
Oh, no, ma'am. The highest grant award that I received, I'd have to look it up.
Okay. And I'm also very interested in any CDBG experience that you have from a grants management standpoint, because in our particular case, we will be entitlement city and not applying, but managing it. So I'm glad to hear that we're going to continue to keep that position in-house because we'll need it. Is there anything that you haven't shared as it relates to your experience that you think uniquely poised you to do this work for the city of South Fulton?
I believe the presentation covered the highlights. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
We have applied for CDBG funds for other clients that are not cities, and those have been awarded before.
We just want to follow up. I know your expertise is primarily health and human services, and from a city standpoint, that's not our core service offering, if you will, as a city. So I'm just trying to understand the connection, and I understand, you know, the fundamentals of grant writing are the same because I've also done it professionally. Just want to understand a little bit more about the strategy or the team that you can tap. Maybe if you could share some insight in their expertise.
Yes. So part of our company with consulting is that we work with clients who we maybe have not had subject matter expertise in before, but we are versed in getting up to speed very quickly, because as you mentioned in writing grants, the process is always the same. It's gathering the correct research and data and then putting it in the process. That's just sort of repeated over and over again. And then our team that we work with, we have people who work with different clients in different subject matters to fill in the gaps.
So we do have one team member who does have extensive CDBG experience. We just worked with her on an emergency solutions grant, and she also has financial experience and compliance with 2 CFR Part 200. That helps with an example of experience.
Okay. And then one last thing, I just think it would be helpful for the council and the public if we understood, you know, as you do these procurements, you know, how many people responded that cross information and the clients in terms of staff recommendation back to council in the future, so we get the full picture. You know, we had to ask them a lot of questions, and it would have been helpful if it was right up.
Okay, Councilwoman Gunn.
Okay, thank you so much. This is not for you. Mr. Clerk.
Yes, sir.
So, and I can really agree with Councilwoman Morrell in regards to having the information. So my question was prompted as to what was the selection criteria for this particular?
For this project, because it was below the 25,000 threshold, I didn't release it as a formal RFP. What I did, I contacted the state of Georgia, and got a listing of all of their recommended grant writers. And they sent me a list of approximately 10 of them, and I went through, interviewed them over the phone, and brought a few of them in for face-to-face. And at the end of it, this company was selected from that process. So the process did start with 10 prospects, and they were the ones selected based off their price quote and the program that they outlined for the city.
Okay, thank you.
All right, Mr. Baker?
Yes, thanks for your presentation. I do have just 2 quick questions. Councilwoman Rao actually asked the question, how much was the largest amount that you guys have received? And I know you don't have it readily available, but do you have a ballpark of how much?
Okay, well, since our company was founded, we raised over $4 million. I also subcontract with other companies, and last year alone, I raised 15.6 million. I think the highest that I raised last year was 5 million for a federally qualified health center.
Okay, and that's fine. I was just curious, and I'm really interested in the reentry program. Can you give me details on what that was? I'm just curious.
So the Bureau of Justice Assistance has a reentry initiative. There are actually several grant programs within the reentry initiative, and there are also some that are offered through the Department of Labor. And this particular reentry program was to develop a coordinated community response and risk assessment that starts within the jail itself and case management. So an individual who's incarcerated would undergo a risk assessment and be assigned a case manager, and upon exit they would work with that case manager to find employment and housing and address any other criminogenic risk factors, mental health, substance use disorders, things of that nature. And then the coordinated response is just to work with the courts and law enforcement and social service agencies to try to reduce recidivism altogether within the community. That was the Fulton.
That was for Fulton County, that was $2 million?
Yes, sir. Yes, I believe that was the ballpark figure.
Last year?
No, this was 2016, I believe.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Jackson?
I think I need to speak.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
We're gonna see each other a lot tonight. Question, because community block grants for me, well, basically for the city, I'm thinking as a whole, but I know in my district, that's something that is needed. And I guess I'm trying to find out what were the basis. You know, did you have a scoring? I mean, what did you guys do? How did you?
How did I go about the selection? The selection was based off the recommendation from the state for the
I understand.
starting
You
point.
said you got the
Then
25
in the narrowing process, it was a function of what they presented and the cost. Cost-wise, it had to be.
But sometimes cost is not all that important when we're talking about generating funds to do things in our city. And I think we need to take time to try to look at, you know, what we're doing.
Understood. But the parameters that I was given in the beginning shaped the way the selection played out.
So they were the lowest?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Dr. Rao, sure for the second time?
No.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, thank you very much for that information. Madam Clerk, would you call the next item, please?
Mr. Malazi, as your capital briefing.
Are they?
Yes.
Financial side of it. As I mentioned, this was the recommendation that instead of having financial people who had to have a contract, or we have to have financial consultants that can help us in the wide range of finances. One of them would be to have internal audit, internal controls, financial analysis, and so on and so forth. So again, it went through the same procurement process. So Mr. Kerr is here if there will be any other questions.
Good afternoon. My name is Steve Jalal. I'm the president of VAAS Professionals. Just prior to forming the company in 2003, I spent 3 years with Deloitte and audited all HUD products throughout the country. Also taught at Oklahoma State University. I taught, of course, in auditing. In 2003, I relocated from Oklahoma to Atlanta to start my practice. It's a full service practice. We do financial reporting, taxes, audit, and business consulting. We currently are an SBA 8A firm. We are currently doing government consulting with the CDC, and we manage about 8 contracts right now with the CDC and all their grantees in Africa. The firm do the budget and ULOs, which is unliquidated obligations. Currently have a contract with the city of Tallahassee to do all the audits for the Tallahassee Housing Department. Also have worked with the city of Atlanta to do all the, in 04, 05, and 6 to do the audit for the transfer of students within the school system. Okay, so our mission is to deliver high quality and innovative services with a personal touch. What makes us different, we stand out, is our multidisciplinary expertise, our experience. As I stated earlier, we have been in business for 16 years now, trustworthiness and collaboration. Our core competencies are audit and related services, financial and operational audits, attestation services, audit reviews and compilation. And also included in that box is internal control, business management services, which is program management and project management, logistics operation, help desk, business process improvement, contracts and grant procurement. Under our accounting and financial management service, we have budget formulation and execution, FASB standard implementation, financial statement preparation. I probably won't go through all of the details just in essence of time. And we have another area where we do information technology and support services. Our process overview process is customized solution to meet our operational needs, training materials developed and aligned with your specific mission and objective as a city, process flow charts implemented to streamline and enhance customer experience, system and process modification. On the state and local government is required to deliver more transparency, efficiency and accountability, a vast professional team with government entities in delivering quality services, implementing efficient processes, setting new standards. With our service deliverables, the city can withstand all examination. At VAAS Professional, we work together with you to address a variety of challenges, including reporting and compliance requirement, risk and internal control, which is a big one for most cities, business process reengineering and operational transformation, and also investment reviews. Reporting and the compliance requirement. This includes revenue projections, expenditure projection, annual deficits or surpluses, reserves, fund balances, fiscal improvement plan. And in stage of our budget cycle, we help our client with budget formulation, execution, justification, and even the audit review system. Reporting and compliance requirement. It depends again on the needs of the city. But we identify ways to expand the tax base and economic development projects, reduce personal service expenditures, explore opportunities to achieve savings through shared agreement. Our reports can be tailored to the city of South Fulton needs. Our offering can address SSAE 16 SOC 1 reports. SOC 1 is a report on the city internal controls over financial reporting that affects its customers. The report evaluates the effectiveness of the city of South Fulton controls and confirm that the controls have been in place in operation and as of a specific date. I can just align this one to Sarbanes-Oxley in terms of the commercial market. In 03, Sarbanes-Oxley, we have the Enron debacle, and during that early stage of the Sarbanes-Oxley, I was engaged with several companies and cities in that establishing those processes. SOC 2 reports, the purpose of this report is to specifically address one or more of the following 5 principles related to the city of South Fulton controls: security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, or privacy. The city of South Fulton balanced scorecards, so we can help developing those. And the vision and strategy, this includes our financial, to succeed financially as a city, how should the city of South Fulton appear to our shareholders, our stakeholders? We identify the objectives, how do we measure those objectives, and our targets and initiatives. To the customers, to achieve the vision, how should the city of South Fulton appear to the public? Again, we can address those objectives, identify those objectives, and how we measure those. Learning and growth. To achieve City of South Fulton vision, how will we sustain our ability to change and improve? And the final area is internal business processes. To satisfy the city customers, what business processes must the city excel at? And those I'll work with, partner with the city in establishing those. And any questions?
Are you good?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Scott?
Ms. Gilliard is in.
Oh, Ms. Gilliard, I'll get it. After Ms. Scott.
Councilwoman, are you ready?
No, after Ms. Scott, I'll get it.
Okay, of course I have some questions. So, not necessarily directed to you right now at this moment, but Mr. Malazi, can you please? I'm assuming that this will be another contracted service that we will be entering into with this.
That's correct.
How much will this cost the taxpayers?
I'm referring to it because it has to go through the proclamation process, so he has more answers that I can answer.
We're still in the negotiation process for this contract. It has not yet been finalized.
Okay. Would that have been part of the selection process, or?
Yes, it will be. We haven't finalized a specific scope. However, we are in the ballpark of, I think we are at 35.
Yes, that's correct.
3,500 per month, I think, is where we're discussing right now.
For how long?
For a 12-month period.
Okay, so being that a scope of work hasn't been developed, what is the immediate need as of right now to have this contract?
So the immediate need for this one will be the internal audit.
Which is due when?
Not external audit. Audit that comes from internal audit is within ourselves. If we have got some projects, we have got some programs, internal audit of programs, how they are, how efficient our programs are with our vision. And that has been an advocate of Councilwoman Willis to have an internal audit. We do not have means of having that on staff. And that's the reason why the city manager recommended to have a company so that we can tap the information that we need as we need it.
Is there any way that, I guess, we have several contracts definitely that are happening in the city. Is there any way that we could possibly consolidate, and do we have another company that could possibly do this work, or?
So financial contracts are different from other contracts. You may have some contracts maybe from economic development. You may have some contracts from South Fulton destination. You may have contracts from police, fire.
No, I'm just saying similar contracts.
Finance, this is the first one that we have.
Okay.
We don't have any other than the external auditors. External auditors, we have them once a year to go through, but we don't have internal auditors on staff.
Okay, understood. I think it's hard if we don't have the narrative behind a lot of this and the need for it. And we just have them coming up and presenting, but we don't have practice or a scope of work that we are going to have this gentleman do for the city. So I think that makes it relatively tough, and we're not able to, really understand what your need is as a CFO. So that's one of my concerns. Also, too, okay, never mind. This company is based locally.
It's local.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Before we go to Ms. Gilliard, I want to point something out. These guys come through procurement, and the HIPAA discussion to that. But they have to come back and be voted on by us. I just want to make sure that was, all right? Am I correct, Mr.?
Yes, I think what's important is, we have heard clearly from council that you guys don't want, whatever you said, last minute items to come before you that you're approving. So these items have gone through the procurement process. I think every topic that is on these work sessions are there to provide robust conversation, and then those things that we introduce to you that you're comfortable with, move forward, and they would be placed, let's say, on the consent agenda, because you get all of the information, conversation, insights, additional information, etc. But then those items that you need more information on, aren't comfortable with, etc., staff would take that feedback and then meet with, let's say, Councilmember Gums and say, hey, you had these 4 questions, let me make sure I answered them all for you, etc., and then bring it back at another meeting instead of the first time you see it be on that agenda asking you to approve it.
And I appreciate that, but we're still missing key elements.
Oh, no, and I haven't looked at these items per se. These have come through finance. But I think the mayor was just trying to highlight the process of us being proactive and making sure we give you information well in advance of the approval meeting.
Okay, Ms. Gilliard?
Okay, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I have a couple of questions for the finance director and for the city manager. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So the first thing that I want to know is, obviously the company is making a presentation about a lot of different things, and some of it relates to various areas in finance and even risk and, I guess, internal control. So my first question is to the finance director, and that question is, what is the status of all of the positions that you have taken that you have not been able to fill? That's the first question. The second question is, who decided that we would hire what appears to be a company that will perform those duties rather than employees? And that gives me a little bit of angst, because I know that we have a lot of talent in our city, and a lot of people that would want to work for the city, and we're the largest employer in the city. And this has nothing to do with the company that made the presentation. Presentation was great. But I want to know, and then the third thing is, and this one is for the city manager, rather than go through the procurement process and bring something to the council and have the council decide whether or not it wants more information before we vote on it, I'd rather do it in the reverse. I'd rather have it be a situation where we have the information come before us and then decide, well, yeah, maybe that's something we would like to move forward with. And, go out and get the information and then come back, rather than to do it the way that we're doing it. So, I'm going to share those things and have some comments as it relates to that.
Madam Attorney, don't leave yet.
So I would try
Hold up for you answer. I would think, especially that first question, is not germane to what we're talking about.
I can't hear.
And it may borderline on something that may have to be dealt with in personnel.
That's
So the
fine.
first question about the hiring, I do agree, Mayor, it's probably
Personnel.
would be better reserved for executive session on personnel.
And I'm wavering on the second one.
Well,
The second one, I think, is okay. I would try, but
Let her have time as the attorney. She's
that's to do
voluntary.
with the funding.
With the funding, I guess if that's more of the discretion of finance, if they think there's information that would be, I mean, I don't think,
And actually, your council approved this. The city manager recommended to have contracting services. And we presented the budget to the council and it was adopted. So this service is budgeted. This contractual is budgeted, it's in the budget. But I will defer on the personnel side to be on the personnel side.
Let me clear up. So your opinion is the first question may be out, but the other two are.
Well, my recommendation for the first question would be to discuss in executive
Absolutely,
session.
yeah. All right, the other two are fine.
Correct.
Okay. You can answer the second one if you have it.
The second one I have answered, that was to
Okay.
do with the funding. The first one is personnel, the second one is the personnel, is to do with funding. You approved, the money is there in finance.
That was a question for the manager. Did you respond, Mr. Manager?
Well, it actually was really a question for the CFO. She asked who made that decision to fall under the CFO purview, so he made whatever decision required for these procurements.
Okay. Okay, Ms. Willis?
Mr. Malazzi.
Okay.
Did the CFO make that decision to hire a company rather than to hire employees?
So last year, it goes up again, it may go again to personnel, so I may be omitting some of these things. Because we discussed last year in details and you approved it to say we are not going to give
I'm going to not answer that question.
Yeah.
Because that's
I
still,
will
to me, that's still personnel.
That's
His
true.
answer is pretty germane. He's basically saying in the FY19 budget, that's pretty simple. I think that's something we can discuss publicly. He's saying that in the FY19 budget, he asked for funding to be able to bring on a firm to support his work. And so, as such, the decision was made during the budget process.
Let me make it clear. When I answer the question, you need to answer.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And the question was, whether the fact, did you say, what did you say? Executive session? Okay.
I said, because he said he was kind of a little bit, he seemed uncomfortable, and he said it's personnel related, so my recommendation is always.
Okay, then we'll stop that right there. Okay? Mrs., is that it, Ms. Gideon? Okay, Ms. Willis?
Mr. Malazzi, my concern is that although procurement processes have been completed on these services, when you come before the elected body, I'm disappointed that we don't have the scope of work, a completed scope of work and cost. I am very disappointed that we have gone through a procurement process, and in some of these presentations, it doesn't seem to be the best quality for our city. Especially when you have, and I'm interested in, maybe that's a procurement question. I'm interested to see the criteria, because you can't tell me that you're gonna recommend to this council for us to hire a grant service company that does not have any experience in municipal services and that have not secured substantial grants. So, but procurement falls under you, Mr. CFO. So you're responsible for overseeing the procurement and our money.
So on the procurement process, how it goes through, it's we have the decision memo, it goes through as the city manager has gone. When it comes to you, we have seen it. This is what we had, and this is what the procurement manager recommended. And on the second part of it, where he has said there was no, how much money was it? It was to be based on as needed. It was not supposed to be every month, but as we need them. We may not need the financial system every month. As you know now, we have the financial advisors. We pay whenever we need, whenever they have assisted us. We don't pay them throughout the year. So that was the aim on the financial side of it. Coming into the grant writers, the main aim that we are going to get from them was the blueprint. Actually, the blueprint, they beat almost everyone that we met. that he made. They were to create the blueprint for the city. And from the blueprint, we can see what do we need. This was a recommendation from the procurement manager.
But what I'm saying is, the blueprint, the people who are supposed to do the blueprint have never worked with municipalities. They've only, and they have not secured $2 million. That's not a lot of money. Speaking in the world of grants. And then, you know, yes, there is a need for an internal auditor, and you do not have that position on your org chart in the finance division. And there is a need for some internal audits to be done on several divisions. But to come before council, and I'm not saying that the company that presented to us isn't qualified, but for us not to have a scope of work and cost, like scope of work meaning what departments he's gonna focus on, you know, what's gonna be the cost.
We will review the procurement process that was followed. We are going to review it.
I'm going to go with Mr. Rao, and I'm going to end with Mr. Baker because we have a healthy agenda still ready on this at this time. So, Mr. Rao, go ahead.
Just really quickly, I think the theme we're here, and I won't be the dead horse. I think the council wants to see full recommendations, even if we discuss them. Looking at procurement, understanding who bid, the scope, the cost, I think that's very important. Yeah, the criteria. I think it helps move us along, and we wouldn't have to kind of go back and forth on the questioning. So going forward, city manager, CFO, that we don't want to do that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Baker.
Yes, Mr. Blasey, I want to thank you for your work. You know, I understand that, and you as well, Mr. Kerr. I understand that our mayor just made a comment prior to this second presentation, and I think the city manager doubled down on it. What you guys are giving us is simply information that we would normally see on the consent agenda ready to approve already. So I appreciate y'all bringing it to us first so that we can confer and understand and digest on our own the things. Of course, I understand that's probably why there's so many questions that are yet unanswered. But this is something that we could have just seen popped up on the consent agenda and approved. So I really appreciate what you guys are doing, and I welcome this process in the future. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Thank you all so much.
Next item on the agenda is programs and performance activities, the city manager's office.
Go right ahead.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Joy Marshall. I'm the Programs and Performance Administrator for the City of South Fulton. And today I'm going to give a brief overview of some of the key activities that's been going on in the Office of Programs and Performance. So what do we do in the Office of Programs and Performance? So my office is charged with making sure that our city departments have everything they need to measure and track and report performance on any major goals or initiatives that we have in the city. And we do so by utilizing data to make these process and programmatic decisions. Another key thing that we do is we use continuous quality improvement, the CQI approach, to make sure that any service delivery that we establish is increasing efficiency by ensuring processes are reliable, and we can implement solutions that foster internal and external satisfaction. We also are looking to remove any barriers that is related to any poor data integrity. That means, making sure that the systems that we're using, we're able to pull raw data that is actually sufficient to be able to ensure that we are developing a culture of responsiveness, transparency, and accountability. So a little history about my office. It was established through a budget amendment in May of 2018 and approved by council. My role was posted and I was hired in July of 2018. And at the beginning of the fiscal year 2019, The GIS team, the records administration team, and the administrative clerk was realigned under my office. So we've been in existence for a little bit over 8 months. So meet the team. We have Mr. Renardo Pascal, who's our records administrator. He's responsible for coordinating open records requests on behalf of the city and ensuring that we are in full compliance. He's also responsible for managing and developing as well as implementing any policies and procedures as it relates to records management for the city. Mr. Christopher Watley, who's our GIS specialist supervisor. He designs and develops our GIS application. So that's making sure that we have appropriate boundary maps that identify boundaries and any other geospatial data to support the business of the city. He's included in pretty much every special project that happens in the city, and one of those major projects is the 2020 Census Complete Count. I also have the administrative clerk, Ms. Oderia Bridges. She is our City Hall receptionist, and she's the first point of contact for all of our public visitors into the building. She's responsible for answering phones, managing the workflow of the visitors, as well as providing clerical support and performing other customer service functions as it relates to the city's business. Here we have several projects and initiatives that are under the Office of Programs and Performance. There's quite a few, and we are really proud of this work that we've been able to be involved in as well as accomplish in such a short period of time. One of the main things that we manage, or that I manage, is the Citizen Response Center, and that's our call center that's 24 hours. We also have our CRC mobile application, which is also available on the website, where our residents and other stakeholders can engage to report different requests or issues that they find throughout the city. I'm also involved in the strategic plan and other activities around that plan, working closely with Intercom, our consultant. We've recently launched the South Fulton 101 webinar series in March, and so that is another activity that falls under the Office of Programs and Performance. I have all of the transparency initiatives, which include ESRI, our GIS tool, ClearPoint Strategy, which is the tool that we'll be using to manage performance in the city when our strategic plan is complete, and I have been involved with the OpenGov implementation process, which is owned by finance. My key role is to assist the city departments in developing key performance indicators for all of the work that we've been doing. I do conduct some quality control audits on both the operational and programmatic side. I'm conducting data analysis to verify information that's coming up, especially through the city manager's report. And under our records administrator, we have refined and are implementing the legislative review process. We also manage the city council requests, and I am involved with the IT team when we are looking to procure new systems, just to make sure that they have certain components to help us do business moving forward. Some of the reports that come out of the office is the city's citywide citizen response dashboard, and we'll talk about that a little later. The district performance report cards, which you'll see in your city manager's report. Some of our interactive map viewers that are posted on our website, as well as the city manager's report, strategic planning survey, customer service surveys, case studies, some training, and working on an annual report. So the 24-hour Citizen Response Center is something that we're really proud of. We launched this in partnership with Jacobs on January 28th, and in that first month, which was only 4 days, we answered 155 calls. So that center is fully online, launched with all departments active, and it is 24 hours, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So we have 25 live operators, which are remote. They are all over the country, and they are accepting calls on behalf of the city all the time. You can see that folks are engaging in that 470-552-4311 number, because from January, we only had 155 calls, and just at the end of March, we were up to over 1,100. Some of the metrics that we are managing against is speed of answer. And so our speed of answer goal is 30 seconds, and we're answering it in a little under 45. So we're well on our way to to making sure that we are meeting and soon exceeding that goal. Talk time, which is also first point, first contact resolution, 3 minutes, and we are answering and resolving calls in a little over 3.5 minutes. So again, well on our way. Abandonment rate, in the first month we were at 11%, but we are now down to the KPI, which is 5%. So really excited about that. In conjunction with the 24-hour Citizen Response Center, we have also launched the Clerk Fix application. That launched in October of 2018 at the very top of the fiscal year. And also excited to say that Clerk Fix implementation team is really proud of us. They thought that we rolled this out in record time, and they said that they have never worked with a team that not only worked so quickly, but was very engaged in the process. Since launching, all city departments are online, and we have opened, as of today, 3,239 requests through the application. We've also closed 2,669. So in the application, we have 653 registered users, and I think that's a big deal because we haven't done a whole lot of marketing of this tool. So one of the reports that is in your city manager's report that comes out of both the 24-hour Citizen Response Center and the Clerk Fix application is the citywide CRC report. And so basically what you're getting now is a month-over-month report showing progress and how it matches up against the goals that we've set. So if you look at this report, you see wherever you see a yield sign, that's a point where we need to pay a little bit more attention and get better at. But overall, in the last 3 months that we've been providing this report, things have been moving in the right direction. The report card is created specifically for the council people. This is also included in your city manager's monthly report. And basically what this is intended to do is give a snapshot of what's going on in your city, where the requests are coming and how many. It also gives you a highlight of how quickly we're responding to them, if we're responding within the SLA that's been assigned to it, and letting you know how many are closed and what's open. So we expect to increase the frequency of this report and also add some detail, but this is our baseline year, so right now we're just gathering information. That leads us to our strategic plan. So I've been working very closely with Intercom and Mr. Bill Stark on the city's strategic plan. We have officially closed our survey on March 31st, so we are in full-blown review process to make sure that we can get something in front of the council soon. We hosted 10 public engagement sessions, and we exceeded our original goal of hoping to engage 200 people and engaged over 240. We also set a goal on our survey to engage approximately 600 respondents, and we exceeded that goal by receiving 685. So as we are working to finalize and do the analysis on those surveys, they will be posted online on the Office and Programs and Performance page, and you'll be able to see that. So what are the next steps for the strategic plan since we have officially closed the public engagement portion? Right now, we are working to approve and finalize the department heads' KPIs, and we are looking to get a final draft in front of council by May 14th. And then from that point, depending on what the feedback looks like, it will go before city manager's final review or review, and then it will come back to council for an approval on June 25th. Once we receive that approval, it will go into full-blown design and then publishing. It's really important for us to get this in front of council for an approval. I know that we have a preliminary performance evaluation that was presented by city manager, but the true way to evaluate any performance is to kind of look at what we said in our strategic plan and make sure that that's what we're reviewing against. South Fulton 101. So this is the city department heads coming together and just following the lead of the council and trying to figure out more ways to engage with the public and get more feedback. We launched South Fulton 101 on March 2nd, and it was a pretty good hit. We had 96 folks registered, 39 people attended on the phone and the web, and the standard conversion rate for a webinar is 40%. So 40% of however many people sign up. I'm sorry, it's 30%. We exceeded that, like 10%. So we did also air the second episode of South Fulton 101 just this past Saturday, and we discussed city services and other partnerships. And we had 157 folks registered with 68 attendees. And so again, 43 conversion rate, which means we're doing pretty good at getting folks to tune in. You know, we encourage everyone to sign up and log on and listen to this and tell your friends all about it. That's some really good information, and the residents are really engaged. So what we've been doing with, or what we plan to do with the questions that come through, especially those that we don't get to answer during the live broadcast, is post to the website. So the replays of these are also posted on the website under the city manager's page, I believe. And they are active and live as of today. Something else that we are working on in the Office of Programs and Performance are case studies. These are two that have been finalized. The idea here is to really capture a lot of the great work that's going on in the city and make sure that it's available for public and internal staff members to review. The intention is to have at least 7 more of these published by the end of the fiscal year. And so I will be working closely with the city manager's office and some of the other department heads to identify what those case studies should really be about. They are also online under the city manager's page. As stated earlier, OpenGov, I have been involved in the implementation process of OpenGov. However, it is housed under finance. My role was to really perform as an analyst to ensure that the data that was being loaded was accurate and really met some of the needs of what the city is trying to accomplish and becoming transparent. We did have a few hiccups along the way in terms of integrating the system into OpenGov, our finance system into OpenGov, but I'm proud to say that we have resolved that, and we do have a live and active integration. I think Workforce is scheduled to come online under OpenGov, but as an HR initiative, and Budget Builder is also scheduled to come online. They're in their implementation phase as of May 1. And so these tools is alive and active. We have 3 reports that you can view right now: the monthly budget to actual, the transactions report, and the check register report. The reason the check register report has an asterisk there is because that is still, unfortunately, one of our manual processes, and we are working to try to get that figured out and part of the full integration. So I will work with finance to see what that can happen. So one of the things that I'm looking at in my office to help us enhance our performance is our resources versus our performance impact. So what this slide really demonstrates is the number of full-time employees that we have today. So I have several of them highlighted in red because these are non-administrative staff. So the bulk of our 392 employees that we have today are in police, and parks, and fire. And so while we oftentimes say we have 500 employees, I think it's important to note that that's our budgeted number. And so when we think about all of the administrative tasks that are happening in the city of South Fulton, once you take away some of those that are highlighted, we're down to about 54 full-time administrative staff folks doing that work on behalf of the city. And so we want to make sure that quality is always high. And you know, this is an alternate way to kind of look at how your performance impacts the city. Another way you can look at that is, you know, 1 employee handles 200 residents. And so, you know, that's a pretty extensive ratio. And now moving into our records department. Mr. Pascal is managing the open records process now in the C-Click application, which our friends over at C-Click considers an innovation. Not many cities, I don't think any cities outside of South Fulton is doing that. We are also looking at bringing the legislative review process into Nova's agenda. I know there's a couple of meetings scheduled in the future for us to kind of finalize what that workflow looks like. The researching records management options is another one of the responsibilities in that office. And then, of course, Mayor's Community Walk. So we are proud to say that the Mayor's Community Walk, we documented over 140 issues, and 100% of those issues have been closed out. There are a few that are open, but they're not under the purview of the City of South Fulton. They actually belong to the Department of Transportation. So we are handing off those open items to the Public Works Director to make sure that we have a complete status update there. Open records requests for fiscal year 19 are at 313. City Council requests are at 207. And we're at a 92% complete rate on open records requests, and 83% complete rate on City Council requests, and again, 100% complete rate on mayor's work activities. So, and then of course our GIS team, which is a team of one, like most of us, is responsible for updating our GIS page. So we have done a few interactive maps that have been added to the site, which we're really excited about. The ArcGIS page is also in the works to be loaded onto the city website, so that we don't have to go to so many different places to get access to zoning information or address information, what's within our boundaries. There's several projects going on in the GIS department, and again, one of those includes supporting the 2020 Census Complete Count activities. There's also some support for city grant proposals and the City of South Fulton's emergency management plan. I mentioned earlier that I have Ms. Oderia Bridges. She's our administrative clerk, first point of contact for the City of South Fulton in this office, and I have it titled as customer experience because I'm looking to do something a little different with that role. We've been looking to really lift some customer service initiatives to just serve our clients better, both internally and externally. We hosted a couple of customer service meetings with our staff just to figure out how we can serve them better. Ms. Bridges is also assisting with research on other tools to help with customer intake at the front desk, just to make sure that we can not just automate that, but be able to provide some really good reports about who we're serving, how we're serving, how quickly we're responding to that. And then my last slide is basically to talk about the path to performance. There's 6 steps that really go into becoming a full-blown performance management city. And the first is where we were when I started 8 months ago. Unstructured, need to verify our data accuracy. And the next phase would be stabilization. That's where we identify centralized financial and operational data into a single platform. We're still trying to figure that out, but if you notice, I have that City of South Fulton is here, right? We're somewhere between, stabilization and measurement. And so while we have some...
Ms. Marshall, I'm sorry to cut you off. I know we've got a couple of additional items and wanted to make sure that council had an opportunity to ask any questions. I know this is the last slide. There were a variety of different topics that went. But Mayor, I know you've got there are a couple of other items on here, and we're pushing against 7 o'clock. With this being the last slide, would it be okay if we allow any questions that council might have? But I know you wanted to address the other 2 items on the agenda.
I think the other 2 items are gonna take a bit of time in terms of discussion. I would say the council would like that we can give another 5-6 minutes for some questions for her, and then we may want to add the other to our regular agenda.
Just point of order, if we do that, I would really appreciate it if we did it at the top of the agenda.
That'd be fine.
Thank you.
Madam Attorney, you want to, what is it?
I think the city attorney just wanted to give you some insight on the protocol to actually adding those items to the regular agenda.
That's fine.
So you would just, you would table the discussion for purposes of, the regular agenda, and then when you get to the regular meeting, when you get to approval of the agenda, you would then just move to amend the regular meeting agenda to incorporate the comments from this session.
That sounds fine, fair enough. Okay, let's go ahead and entertain some questions and hopefully we can get out of this. Ms. Guns?
Actually, I'll waive my questions also.
Okay, Ms. Rao?
I see there's a timeline, and it's associated, I guess, with our strategic plan, so you didn't get to kind of speak to it, but it looks like in terms of the key performance indicators, the department heads and everybody look, and there's a draft coming to council, but it won't be until May.
Yes, so the meetings with the department heads and assistant city manager are in progress now. And this is just giving them an opportunity, because the plan is coming so much later than we anticipated, to review the KPIs that they've set for their department goals to ensure that when we do get a final, that they're up to date for 2020.
You said you work closely with the firm that's doing the strategic plan. Kind of where is all that? At the May 14th, will the whole initial draft of the strategic plan come with the KPMI?
Yes, so the draft that you all will receive on May 14th will be a final complete draft from cover to back cover of what the strategic plan will consist of. So all of the department goals, all of the mayor's letter, city manager's letter, all those things will be included.
Okay, that was my question. That's helpful. Because I was under the impression it was just the KPMI.
Ms. Williams?
Is there any way that, and thank you for your presentation, is there any way for the City Clerk Fix-It, we're doing a lot of marketing and calling it a 311 platform. Is there any way that we can structure the call to be COSF or SF311? Because I'm getting a lot of complaints from residents when they're dialing 311 and they get the City of Atlanta customer service line. And so that, I know you gave an actual number that they're supposed to call, and Mr. Donald recommended that we tell everybody to go to the webinar 101 training, but realistically, a lot of people in our community, we have an aging population, and they don't know what a webinar, they just don't deal with a lot of technology. So we have to reach everybody. We have to meet people where they are. And to force people to try to figure out how to get to the webinar 101 training, I think it's not realistic. So is there any way we can check into when people want to call in problems, not having them to remember the entire number, maybe structure it to be COSF or South Fulton 311?
So I think that's with our IT department, and there have been a few conversations around how do we go about making that happen. And so I will talk with Mr. Strickland and city manager and see what the steps to get that set up would look like.
Okay, my last question is the GIS position, do you think that position would be better served under IT versus under you? Because it seems like he's doing a lot of IT related.
So, I mean, it's a heavy data position, and so maybe in the future, but I think now as we're trying to define and develop what data looks like for the city of South Fulton, how we report out, that it makes sense for it to be with me, just, until we get to a point where once it's set up, structured, and really running on its own, then it probably could go over to IT. But.
Okay, and then as it relates to IT, should we have someone specifically for law enforcement? Because the reason I'm asking is, I everything that we're asking our police to do, he is technology driven. And we have very limited IT staff. And he's saying he's waiting on IT, or IT has to see if he can research and if there's capability. And so my question is, you know, from a performance measurement point of view, do you think that in the next budget cycle, we should look to try to get someone that is focused on public safety, IT needs?
So I think what we need to do is focus on, you know, really building up the GIS department. A lot of the work that's happening in public safety that's requiring or relying on an IT or a GIS team member really could be handled through the GIS department. So once our foundation is laid and all of the information is entered and uploaded into that system, all of us will be heavy on technology, but we'll all be kind of pointed towards one central location where we're pulling our data from, and it won't seem so cumbersome. So.
Okay.
You know, another thing to highlight, Councilmember Williams, is when we look at that breakdown, I actually did show the thing about a week ago that of the 500 budgeted positions that we have, only about 50 of them are working on that type of administrative work. And so you can see the breadth and width of all of the activities happening. So we really are expanding or have needs to expand capabilities throughout departments. And so when we look at the 2020 budget, it'll probably be important to look at, I mean, we can't quadruple that number, but we do need to look at where we put those strategic investments, because that's a very heavy lift on 50 people across the city.
I agree.
All right, we'll do Mr. Cleveland, and we'll close this out with guns.
I've removed mine.
You will, Mr. Cleveland?
I was so excited about the 311 number. I've given it out to everyone. When we started, I remember people would answer the phones like live, and now I'm getting a lot of complaints from my constituents saying that they just get a recording. And so I'm wondering, what is the staff of that? What is the staff of that?
So there are 25 live call takers that are answering the 470-552-4311 number. What the recording that the callers are hearing is the notification ensuring them that they have indeed reached the city of South Fulton. And if they hang on just 10 more seconds, they will get to the live operator.
And where are those 25 people located?
So most of them are in Phoenix, Arizona. Remember, this is in partnership with Jacobs Engineering. But some of them, a few of them are spread throughout the United States, including Georgia. So we have a couple here in Georgia.
I want to take a field trip to Phoenix.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ms. Marshall.
Thank you.
If it's your preference, Khalid, I would say let's take a 10-15 minute break and then come back. Okay?